What's going on, everybody? It's Ted again with the countdown.geeks.com, and I got a very special interview for you guys. Director of the brand new comedy Running on Empty, director and writer, I apologize, Daniel Andre. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Ted?
I'm doing wonderful. This was such a quirky and unique film. So,
Thank you.
sort of a dark at times story, but still with sort of a positive message behind it. Tell us how you were inspired to come up with this story.
Sure. Yeah. I think life and death is just such a broad subject. It's such a human experience and condition that everybody experiences or will experience. So that was kind of, the universal idea. Um, Beyond that, it was, a few years before writing it, I came across these things online called extreme funerals, which in the script is the mortuary does adventure funerals. But they actually do funerals where they'll put somebody, if they loved riding their motorcycle, they'll put them on their motorcycle, or they'll, have them be doing something they love doing. And it kind of reminded me of back in my childhood when my grandfather died. It was the first funeral I'd ever been to. And I remember we went to the wake, and my mom and me, we go up to the casket, and, there's my mom like held his hand. I just remember it was a very traumatizing experience because clearly that wasn't my grandfather anymore, and even at a young age,
Right.
you understand that. And I've always thought it's weird, just especially in American culture, how taboo death is and how separate we keep it from everything else, and how it's always feared or painted in a very ugly picture. Where if you look at it like in other cultures, or like Buddhism or Hinduism, or whatever, a lot of other cultures and religions look at it as much more of a celebratory thing, and there's much more of an understanding that person is no longer that body. um and so it really was an interesting area and interesting themes to kind of tackle. But more on the creative level, especially for a first film, I just decided to go the route to try and pay homage to all of the directors and films that I loved growing up. Back to, I think it might have been, I was too young at the time to see it, but Five Easy Pieces with Jack Nicholson, After Hours, Martin Scorsese, Punch Drunk Love, Paul Thomas Anderson, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Charlie Kaufman. I've always sort of leaned towards independent and kind of left of center kind of storytelling, music, whatever.
Tell us about the process of choosing. I hope I say his name right. Is it Keir Gilchrist?
That's it.
Tell us about the process of selecting him as your lead. He did an incredible
Yeah.
job. What was the moment or the audition process like where you knew he was the right one?
Yeah, it was actually I watched, so I was aware of Keir, and I'd seen him in things for years, particularly It Follows, which is one of my all-time favorite horror films of the last like couple decades.
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, I saw a friend of mine turned me on to his show on Netflix, Atypical. And even though Sam, the character he played on that, is very different from Mortimer, I just when I saw Keir, I was just like, that is Mortimer. And so we went to him, and lucky for us, he read the script and really connected with it. And we kind of built a relationship off of that. And then Lucy came on board, and as they say, the rest is history, and it kind of just snowballed.
I love it. Yeah. Mortimer the Mortician. What was the not maybe just the reasons behind making him a mortician in the movie, just to give
Mhm.
him sort of that perspective of death to start off with, and then able to kind of see how he changes by the end of the movie?
Yeah, I think it was a combination, and also just sort of, I don't mean for satirical factor, but kind of in a way to where, what happens if, a person who deals with death all day, every day for other
Yeah.
people then has to deal with it themselves. But also, it was kind of meant to where, obviously, if we live in a society where people have the option to know when they're going to die, it becomes much more normalized. So, Francesca's character in it, she freaks out a little bit, and then she gets over it rather quickly. And Kier doesn't seem phased by it. And one, it's because he's the mortician and he's around death. But two, you have to think, if and when that ever becomes an available option for us, it would become normalized at some point where you're like, oh, okay. And it's just a matter of how long is gonna, be better or worse.
And you're talking about knowing your death day, right? That's what you're referring
Yeah.
to. Yeah,
Yes.
that was a wild concept, and it's actually quite terrifying when I thought about it even more. What was I mean, other than like the plot and the story, sort of came, what inspired you to come up with that concept, that mechanism of like a person knowing the day they're gonna die?
Yeah, it again, I think it kind of just came from like my healthy or unhealthy fear of death growing up. And what's funny is, and this is kind of more on a personal level, is I didn't even realize this till recently, but I'd say when I was working on Mort, I still had a decent normal fear of death. And by the end of it now, I actually don't have that anymore. And I don't know if it has to do with a lot of things, a lot of, personal work and other things. And then just through this experience, and, if anything else, from my personal experience, I guess that's was the purpose of this film, maybe is to help me grow as not only an artist, but, maybe spiritually or personally.
So it was cathartic in a way, going through this whole process, exploring this avenue in this story.
Surprisingly, surprisingly, yeah.
Wow, that's brilliant.
And I didn't set out for it to be that. A lot of filmmakers might set out to tell this personal story that they hope might change their life in some way. That wasn't it at all. In to give you a little background, again, it was sort of to make my first film. I just decided to go with an homage to films that I loved and directors that I loved. Um, and then based on that, just as a great side positive, side note, it had this other effect on me.
I love hearing that. It's a happy accident, if you will, or fortuitous accident going through that. You mentioned that this is your first film. Was it at all overwhelming at times to be behind the camera, be the director,
Mhm.
making sure that everything's sort of moving at an adequate pace, or did you kind of just go along with it? Tell us about that experience.
Sure. It surprisingly wasn't. I don't want to say difficult because every movie is going to be difficult. But it was surprisingly easier than I thought it was going to be, and I don't say that lightly, and I don't dismiss how hard filmmaking is. But I think that I believe in everything happens for a reason. I started acting when I was 5 years old. I started making my own movies when I was 10. I got into, DJing and music making, and I did that for years. And all of this, I did theater for years. And I didn't really, I hated theater when I was a kid because I just wanted to be in the movies, right? But it wasn't until like actually making this film where I really had a profound appreciation for all of those years of theater, because that's what gave me sort of the work ethic, and the group work ethic to work with all of these other creatives and to realize, it's not all about me, that this is a combined effort of a lot of creatives. And you have to be open to that. And I think when you are, things happen where a shoot becomes easier and everybody is more invested and it becomes fun and it becomes like shooting a movie at summer camp, rather than making it all about me and my vision and trying to beat people over the head with that, because that's not fun for anybody, and it's probably not, you wouldn't even be fun for me.
Yeah, no, it's a great perspective, and it sounds like theater really gave you like a solid foundation for like doing all this other stuff. So that's wonderful. Um, Here's your moment. I'm gonna ask you, pitch Running on Empty to everyone watching at home. Why should they see this movie when it drops on video on demand August 27th?
For me, I think, it's, we always talk about movies being like a great escape. What I actually think this movie is a great escape from current movies. I think I've always been, again, I've been an artist my whole life and worked in all these different mediums. Um, and I've always appreciated kind of those smaller stories. I don't think, things have to be a giant $100 million film to make an impact on an audience. And I feel there's at times where I feel like none of the movies that I grew up, like Five Easy Pieces, I wasn't old enough at the time to see it in theaters, but Five Easy Pieces would never be made today. It would never be put into a theater. The Royal Tenenbaums, I don't think you could make that movie today.
Yeah.
So, Punch Drunk Love, the same
Oh, yeah.
thing. And so for me, it was really, it was purposeful to try and make something to bring cinema back to being cinema and to being fun and to, you know, I think what happened was Hollywood took all of like the best directors and the best movies and their stories, and it just like formulated them. And so it's like everything now that you watch, I feel is so, I don't want to say overproduced, but it's like there's just too many layers, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's not about like stacking layers and layers and layers. It's about the quality of those layers. So even if you only have two or three, you know, it's very much like Jim Jarmusch is another one, you know, kind of like a weird kind of slice of life kind of movie. And I feel that there aren't enough of these being made, and especially at a studio level. And you know, I want to say also, I'm so proud of Universal and Lionsgate for, you know, taking a chance on this kind of film, because I think we need more of these out there, or at least the same amount that we have of the other to choose from.
I gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think out of all the genres, I think horror is kind of going through a renaissance, and you're seeing more small
Mhm.
time filmmakers getting opportunities to kind of put, you know, show what they got and tell really unique and refreshing stories. But I'm gonna keep my eye on you, man, because I love your perspective. I love what
Thank you.
your where your passion's at, where your heart's at, and I can't wait to see what's next for you, man. Daniel Andre,
Awesome.
Running on Empty drops on video on demand August 27th. You can also find in select theaters on August 9th. Thanks so much for your time,
Yep.
man. I can't wait for everybody to watch this.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.